I'm airing it out because, you know, get it? It's the MacBook Air. It's also incredibly hot here in the studio, so that's actually the main reason. What's up, YouTube? It's your boy, BMAC. And if this is your first time here to this channel, welcome, thanks for stopping by. Make sure you hit that subscribe button with all notifications turned on so that you never miss another video on this channel. And if you've been here before, or if you're already subscribed, welcome back. So today, we're taking a close look at the brand new 2020 MacBook Air. And it's safe to say the MacBook Air has come a long way since its original debut, but what does that mean for the 2020 MacBook Air? How does this thing hold up? Well, we've got some new features. We've got the return of some old features that are somehow new again. We've got a lot to talk about. So let's break this review down one part at a time, starting things out with the MacBook Air design. I've always been a huge fan of the MacBook Air design. I love pretty much everything about it. You get that amazing teardrop shape. It's light, it is super portable, and it is ridiculously easy to pack up and take with you pretty much anywhere you're going. That, plus the fact that it's pretty minimal, made of 100% recycled aluminum, and the fact that it's available in space gray, like we have here, gold or silver, makes it a pretty darn good looking and pretty versatile, useful laptop computer. It is still sexy as ever. So immediately upon opening this bad boy up and using the keyboard, you're gonna notice a difference. You are going to notice the new Magic Keyboard that Apple has implemented in the 2020 MacBook Air. Now, technically, I guess you could say this isn't really innovation. The Magic Keyboard is actually a scissor keyboard as opposed to a butterfly keyboard that we've had over the last couple of years, and to put it nicely, people did not really like. There literally are gonna be some people out there who will want to upgrade to the 2020 MacBook Air because of the new Magic Keyboard, the new scissor keyboard alone. I know that sounds crazy, but that just goes to show how important the keyboard experience is on a laptop and on the 2020 MacBook Air. Finally, that keyboard experience is pretty close to perfect. Another thing I actually love about the newer MacBook Pros and MacBook Airs is the Touch ID button we get as part of the keyboard. I've said on this channel several times before, I've also been pretty vocal on social media about how much I miss Touch ID on my iPhone. Yes, Face ID is amazing. I love Face ID. Face ID makes sense to actually unlock your phone, but there are some instances in which I do miss Touch ID on the iPhone. This mostly is just for when like the iPhone is face up and at a distance and I wanna look at the notifications on my home screen. I just wanna like place my finger on the display to unlock it rather than having to hover over it. Or just for authentication purposes, it's just sometimes easier to have Touch ID. And on a laptop, it's so helpful to have that Touch ID for a variety of different reasons. I won't spend a whole video talking about that here, but just know, I love that Touch ID button, and you do get it on the new MacBook Air. And apparently, we're doing a system update right in the middle of a review video, which is kind of ironic. And one last little thing to note, you do get a hardware escape key, so if that's something of concern, nothing really new there, but just know in the 2020 MacBook Air, you also do have hardware escape key. In terms of the 2020 MacBook Air display, well, you are a little bit limited here. For one thing, the display on the new MacBook Air is actually not a wide color gamut display. And just know that it's not the brightest display either. Only 386 nits. Now that's not terrible. For most situations, that's gonna be fine. Unless you're working in direct sunlight and or if you need that wide color gamut display, chances are the display on the MacBook Air, it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be exactly what you need. Now let's talk about another thing on the outside of the MacBook Air. Your Thunderbolt 3 connectors. We still only have 2 Thunderbolt 3 connectors on the MacBook Air. Those are literally the only 2 ports besides the headphone jack on the right side of the MacBook Air that you are getting. But just know, even though there are only 2 of them, those Thunderbolt 3 ports are awesome. They're capable of and handle so many different things. First of all, charging of your MacBook Air. They could also support display outputs, external GPUs, audio interfaces. I mean, Thunderbolt 3 definitely lives up to the hype, and you get 2 of those ports on the MacBook Air, which when you're using the MacBook Air, probably is sufficient for your needs, although I wouldn't have minded seeing another Thunderbolt 3 port, maybe on the right side of the MacBook Air instead of the headphone jack. Just saying. But with 2 Thunderbolt 3 ports, that should be fine. And those have an incredible amount of bandwidth to be able to pull off pretty much anything you need to do, even if you're using hubs. Speaking of those Thunderbolt 3 ports, the cherry on top for some users might be that you actually do now get Pro Display XDR support. That in and of itself is pretty impressive. And if that's your thing, if you're gonna be using the MacBook Air with a connected Pro Display XDR display, I mean, if that's your thing, no worries, you could do it. All the more power to you. And then there's really only one more physical thing I wanna talk about in regard to the MacBook Air. That FaceTime HD camera built into this thing, still only $720. The FaceTime HD camera on the 2020 MacBook Air is still only a 720p FaceTime camera, which for most intents and purposes is probably fine, all you need. But when you are comparing that kind of camera to the cameras we're getting on something like the iPhones now, I don't think it would kill Apple to at least up that thing to 1080, especially considering how much more video conferencing we're doing now as a general world population, considering everything going on. So I just hope one of these days we will get a refresh with an upgraded resolution for that FaceTime HD camera. It's not gonna make or break your decision, hopefully, but just something I would have liked to have seen. And that pretty much does it for the outside of the MacBook Air. The other thing certainly worth talking about, well, a couple things actually, is what's going on the inside. Starting things out with, perhaps most importantly, the processing power. The new MacBook Air gets 10th generation Intel CPUs, which is definitely gonna help these babies purr just a little bit more. You also do get Intel Plus graphics. That's good. Those 2 things alone make the MacBook Air that much more powerful, that much more capable. But keep in mind, I still don't think those 2 things alone make the MacBook Air a power horse of a computer. It'll get a lot done, it'll be quick and it'll be snappy for most of your basic computer needs, and you could probably even push it a little bit with the upgraded options available, which we'll talk about in just a second. But if you do plan on doing some higher end, resource intensive creative work, you're probably stepping more into the MacBook Pro category. At the baseline level, if you're doing just basic web browsing, video watching, maybe some minor video editing, minor photo editing, maybe even a little bit of just minor gaming like on Apple Arcade, MacBook Air is gonna be fine. And like I said, it becomes more and more capable once you start to add on the additional configurable options with the MacBook Air, but you are still limited. The base model of the 2020 MacBook Air actually comes with a dual core processor. The next step up is actually a quad core processor, and that alone will make a substantial difference in your processing power. And you could actually get up to 16 gigs of RAM on this bad boy, so you are working with some pretty good specs there, but again, just keep in mind that the more you intend to do with this thing, the more you're gonna be limited, and the more you might wanna take the next step up to the MacBook Pro. More on that in just a second, but keep that in mind. The MacBook Air is meant to be a step down from the MacBook Pro. It is not meant to replace the MacBook Pro by any means, so don't expect it to be able to perform on par with the MacBook Pro. 2 totally different devices, 2 totally different computers that are meant for 2 totally different people and 2 totally different purposes. Now let's talk storage. We actually have a larger starting storage option at 256 gigs as opposed to the 128 that I had a very hard time recommending to anyone. So that's good. On the dual core version of the MacBook Air, we do have storage starting out at 256 gigs. On the quad core version, storage actually starts at 512 gigs. And then you also do have a 1 terabyte storage option with a new maximum storage option of 2 terabytes. So that's solid, and do keep in mind it is a laptop computer, and through those Thunderbolt 3 ports on the side, you do have the option of external storage down the line if you need to take advantage of that. I like to have a higher local storage just to keep things clean and organized and not bottleneck myself in terms of file storage down the line, but 256 if you're doing basic computer work, pretty good place to start. As always, the more you plan on doing with your MacBook Air and the larger the file sizes you plan on working with, the more storage you probably should look at getting. But with all this going on, what's the battery life like? Apple says with simple web browsing, you should expect to get up to 11 hours of battery life on the new MacBook Air. But in my experience, it's a little bit less than that. Actually more like around 9 hours, but do keep in mind, I like to have my display very bright no matter what device I'm using. I'm almost always at max display brightness. Don't know how I haven't burned my retinas out by this point, but I'm still good and I'm still on max brightness on pretty much everything. But even at 9 hours, basically, even with a little bit of a heavier load of work that you're doing on the MacBook Air, it should last you a full workday, possibly even a little bit longer if you're just kind of smart about how you're actually utilizing the battery life. Maybe turn that brightness down a little bit, maybe put it into sleep mode when you're not using it. Be cautious of the number of battery-hungry apps you're running at any given time. Things like that you wanna keep in mind no matter what device you're using. So with all that having been said, then what is my overall opinion of the new 2020 Apple MacBook Air? Basically, this laptop is going to be my go-to recommendation for your basic computer needs when you're shopping for an Apple computer. It's lightweight, it's super portable, it's stylish. We didn't even talk about the speakers, but the speakers sound great too. If you're not gonna be doing crazy amounts of work, if you're not gonna be doing high-end 4K video editing with color correction, LUTs, and maybe even some massive Photoshop files, if you're just doing basic multitasking, email, browsing, maybe a little bit of video editing and photo editing mixed in, you're gonna love the MacBook Air. It's gonna be perfect for your needs. The more you add on to it, such as with that quad-core processor or those 16 gigs of RAM, the more capable it becomes, but you are still limited in the scope of what the MacBook Air is meant to do. Definitely plan on adding on those configurable options. If you do think you'll be doing a little bit of photo or video editing, this will get you by, but if you're doing intense video, photo editing, any kind of creative work, again, I'm gonna try to push you into the MacBook Pro category. The MacBook Pro is definitely gonna be a better solution for your everyday workhorse needs as it relates to high-end laptop performance. Do keep in mind, however, that the iPad Pro is also worth considering here, just as portable with that whole touch option, so that's something to consider as well. We'll talk about that more on this channel, so definitely be sure to subscribe so you don't miss comparisons between devices like the iPad Pro and computers like the MacBook Air. But overall, the 2020 MacBook Air, a great refresh of the MacBook Air, a refresh, especially considering that new keyboard, it was very much needed. If you guys wanna find out more information about the 2020 Apple MacBook Air, or just to cop one of these bad boys for yourself, you guys could actually head to my affiliate link, bmac.link/2020 MacBook Air, bmac.link/2020 MacBook Air, or as always, there will be a clickable link in the video description box below. Thank you guys so much for watching this review video. Be sure to smash that thumbs up on if you enjoyed it, and do me a favor, comment down below your thoughts on the new MacBook Air. Do you love it? Do you hate it? Will you be upgrading solely for the new scissor keyboard and that magic keyboard you're getting on this thing, as opposed to the experiences we had in other keyboards in the past? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, I'll be liking, hearting, and replying to some of my favorites. I will see you guys in my next video. I swear this thing is so thin across the front edge that you could probably get a paper cut just by running your finger across it. Seriously. Ow! Just kidding, totally kidding, but close.